Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to my review of tonight's edition of Monday Night Raw. And I gotta say, Raw tonight wasn't that good, in my opinion. Had matches that were pretty pointless, but there were some matches that I liked, though. But all in all, it just wasn't a good show tonight. But the show opened up with Kurt Angle in the ring, and he had the whole Raw roster on the stage, and he's just talking about how last week when Shane came to Raw with the SmackDown stars and they invaded Raw, and how Shane says he's putting Raw under siege, and the SmackDown superstars came and they beat the hell out of some of the Raw roster there, and Kurt apologizes to the Raw roster, and says that he put them all in harm's way, and he would never do it again. And then I got to mention there were a few surprises tonight that we didn't know if that they were coming back, but Stephanie McMahon returns. She comes back, and she goes on to say that that they will be celebrating the 25th anniversary of Raw on January 22nd of next year, and it's going to be held at the Barclays Center and also at the Manhattan Center. But I'm like, originally I was gonna possibly attend to go to the 25th anniversary if my friends wanted to go. But now, since they're putting it in two different places, I'm like, I don't know if I would go now, because it's going to be at two different places. They're going to be at the Barclays, and they're also going to be at the Manhattan Center. So, don't know, like, because they said some of the superstars are going to compete at the Manhattan Center, and legends are going to be there. Shawn Michaels, Kevin Nash, and rumored to be there, The Undertaker. So it's kind of a mess as you think about it. But she goes on to say about that, and she also says that Kurt has been doing a hell of a job as general manager of Raw, and that he has earned her respect until Shane put Raw under siege last week. And she also blames Kurt for making a mockery of Raw last week, and she ends up telling Kurt that he is going to be the team captain of Team Raw at Survivor Series. It's pretty much she's saying it's going to be, annihilation for Raw to get back at SmackDown at Survivor Series. And that pretty much was the opening segment to Raw. I mean, it was okay. Then after that, we saw Stephanie says that she meant everything she said to Kurt out there in the ring, and she's like, "Oh, if you want to, if you want to still be GM, do what I say, or you could ask Mick Foley, because if Kurt doesn't get the job done, it could possibly mean him, not being GM of Raw anymore." But then we see her take off in a limo. Another limo arrives, and out comes Miz and Curtis Axel and Bo Dallas. And Kurt says to Miz that that Stephanie put the whole Raw roster on notice, and he tells Miz that he's going to put the Intercontinental title on the line tonight against a mystery opponent. So it was a little backstage segment. And then it was originally going to be Alicia Fox versus Bayley, the first match, but Alicia ends up coming out. She has like a captain's hat on, and she ends up saying to Bayley that she has to take her, being captain of the Raw Women's team, very seriously, and that she doesn't want to and she tells her that she doesn't want to compete against Bayley tonight, and she ends up introducing her replacement, which happens to be Nia Jax, who was returning, which is cool. But this match, it's now Nia Jax versus Bayley. This match was just a squash match, not nothing anything special, not that good in my opinion. Just you had Nia just win the match, pretty much just squashed Bayley. Then after the match, Alicia announces Nia to represent the Raw Women's team at Survivor Series in the 5-on-5 Survivor Series elimination women's match against SmackDown, against the SmackDown Women's Division. But it was just a squash match, like I said, between Nia and Bayley. Then after that, Samoa Joe, another star who ended up returning tonight, which was really cool. And we haven't seen Joe since I think since SummerSlam, which it's a pretty while since we've seen him. But he returns and he gets on the mic and he says, he knows that the crowd missed him, and that he goes on to say, "Oh, I didn't miss any one of you," because he goes on to say nobody reached out to him, and that he's using the crowd's disrespect as fuel of anybody who steps in the ring with him. So it was pretty much that. Though I mean, it's good to see Samoa Joe back. Good to see Joe back. And eventually led to a match, Samoa Joe versus Apollo Crews. This was another squash match that, it's not that good. But it was just Joe dominating on Apollo Crews. He won the match. Joe won the match with the coquina clutch on Apollo to score the win. Then you had after the match, Joe spit his gum at Titus because Titus O'Neil was, of course, at ringside. Joe spit the gum at Titus, and Titus wanted a piece of Joe. And at first Joe wanted nothing to do with Titus, so you saw Titus end up helping Apollo, and then from out of nowhere, Joe just comes and he puts the coquina clutch on Titus, and Titus, I'm like, you never turn your back on Joe. Never turn your back. So, but all in all, it was just a squash match. Nothing special or great. Then, after that, it was The Miz versus Matt Hardy. Matt Hardy was the mystery opponent for Miz. And this was for the Intercontinental Championship. And surprisingly, this was a entertaining match. I actually really liked it. It was back and forth between Miz and Matt. Of course, we all knew Matt Hardy probably wasn't going to win the match, though. But Miz won it, and he still retains the Intercontinental Championship with the skull crushing finale to Matt Hardy. So, but it was an entertaining match. I really enjoyed it. Then we had, after that, Alexa Bliss approaches Kurt Angle and says to him that, she says to Kurt that his speech was motivating and that she wants him to cut dead weight in the women's division, like Mickie James. And Kurt says to Alexa that she's going to put the women's title on the line against Mickie James tonight. So it was a little backstage segment with Alexa and Kurt. And yeah, there was I forgot to mention there were superstars that were released over the weekend. One of them being Emma, which wasn't a fan of her, but maybe she could find some, some luck in the Indies, maybe, or possibly she might return to WWE down the line. And then we had Summer Rae, who was released, which we haven't seen her in God knows how long. And Darren Young also got released also, which they weren't doing anything with him. So, but anyways, next match was Asuka versus some woman jobber. Just a way to make Asuka look, more strong and build her up. So Asuka won the match with the Asuka lock. Moving on. Then after that we saw Kurt, backstage, and then surprisingly Daniel Bryan ends up coming to Raw tonight, and Kurt says, what the hell are you doing here? And then Daniel says to Kurt that, he doesn't agree what Shane did last week. And Kurt ends up telling Daniel Bryan to give Shane a message in that, he's going to pack his gold medals and him and the Raw roster are coming, after SmackDown. So it was pretty much that. Then we saw Daniel on the phone with Shane, possibly. All of a sudden the lights go out and it goes to commercial, and then when it comes back from commercial, we find out that he's locked in the room. He thinks Kurt locked him in there purposely, and then from out of nowhere we see Kane in there, and then he chokeslams Daniel Bryan. So, and that was part of the end of that little segment. And then after that we had Finn Balor versus Cesaro. Very entertaining match. Another entertaining match. It was back and forth between Balor and Cesaro. You had Cesaro hit a really nice suplex from the top on Finn Balor, which I thought was really awesome, which was really cool. But Finn Balor ended up getting a win with a double stomp to the back of Cesaro's neck, which was pretty awesome. So Finn Balor scored the win, and after the match, Kane ended up coming out, and Finn starts taking out Kane, trying to take out Kane, but Kane ended up coming back, and he hit a tombstone to Finn on the stage. So Finn was laid out on the stage. So, but all in all, it was an entertaining match, Finn and Cesaro. And then after that, Kane was still in the ring, and it was Kane versus Seth Rollins, and Dean Ambrose was out there at ringside. This was a decent match. It was back and forth between Kane and Rollins. You had Kane pretty much dominate through some parts of the match against Rollins, but he won the match. Kane won the match with a chokeslam to Seth to score the win. So, but all in all, it was a decent match. Then after the match, you had Ambrose give a dirty deeds to Kane. Kane ended up sitting up, and then he gave Ambrose a tombstone, and then he gave another tombstone to Seth. So but like I said, all in all, Kane versus Seth Rollins was a decent match. Then after that, we saw Daniel Bryan being rolled out on a stretcher after he got chokeslammed by Kane. Then we saw The Miz, Curtis Axel, and Bo Dallas. They head into Miz's room, and they find a garbage bag in his room, and he says Braun Strowman, is probably here, and Miz goes on to say that he's a little worried about that because of what we saw at TLC, where they put Strowman in the back of the garbage truck. So, and then we saw after that, Miz runs into Kane and asks him about Braun Strowman. Kane says if he runs into Strowman, he will take care of him. And Miz goes to say to Kane, "Oh, we are a team." And Kane ends up telling Miz, that Miz is on his own and they aren't a team. So it was funny though. Then we had Heath, Slater, and Rhyno versus Gallows and Anderson in a trick or treat fight, and this was just a hilarious match. This was a very funny, fun match. In a way, Gallows and Anderson deserve a lot better than this. But it was pretty much, they were just tossing around pumpkins. There was at one point where they put, I think it was Gallows in a, bobbing for apples thing. And at the end, Heath, Slater, and Rhyno won the match. So it was pretty much a fun match. It was a very funny match. All the times when they do this at between when it's around Halloween. So then we had Born Elias come out. He just talks about Jason Jordan, shows a video on the Titantron. Then we see Jason Jordan then come out. Elias retrieves out of the ring, and we just see Jason Jordan just destroying Elias's guitar. He stomps on it. So pretty much it was basically that. I mean, it was pretty much a segment. Then we see Kurt Angle approach Miz and Curtis Axel, Bo Dallas. Kurt says to Miz, to stay to the end of the show and not leave, because last week Kurt was like, "Oh, where were you when the roster was being attacked by the SmackDown roster last week?" So Kurt wasn't really happy about that Miz wasn't there. Then after that, we had Enzo Amore come out. He was with Drew Gulak. Both of them just start talking about Kurt Angle. Enzo saying Kalisto will never take the Cruiserweight title from him again. And eventually led to a match. It was Kalisto versus Drew Gulak, which was meh. Wasn't that good of a match. You just had Kalisto win the match with the Salida del Sol on Drew Gulak to score the win. And then you had, after the match, Enzo then attacked Kalisto, laid out Kalisto. So it was pretty much basically a meh kind of match. And then after that, you had the main event. It was Alexa Bliss versus Mickie James. And this match, this main event was decent. It was back and forth between Alexa and Mickie. They were just, going at it. Alexa won the match. She still retains the Raw Women's title with the DDT on Mickie. And just after that match, you saw The Miz and Curtis Axel, Bo Dallas. They're in a limo. They're trying to leave. A garbage truck backs up, and the lift of the garbage truck lifts up, and out comes Braun Strowman. and he ends up chasing off, Miz and Curtis Axel, Bo Dallas, and we see they all brawl on the stage, and it was really crazy. Braun Strowman just picked up Curtis Axel, threw him down the ramp of the stage, through Bo Dallas, and also Miz. We see Braun take Axel into the ring, and then Braun just starts beating the hell out of Axel. He gives Axel, I think it was 5 running power slams, and then he ends up putting Axel through the announcers table, and that pretty much ends the show tonight. So, but it was a pretty solid ending to tonight's show. Which, like I said, the show wasn't that good tonight. A lot of the matches pretty much like 70% were just meh or not that good matches, except for Miz and Matt Hardy, and Kane and Rollins. Hell, I even had fun with the trick or treat fight, so didn't hate it though. So yeah, so anyways, that's it for my review of tonight's edition of Monday Night Raw. Thank you all for watching, and be sure to give this video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all back here tomorrow night for my SmackDown review, which will be the Halloween edition of SmackDown tomorrow night. So until that video, I'll see you all back here tomorrow night. Bye.